then we spend on a ridiculous amount of time unraveling our sense of self. And so I call that, Audley, I call that your personal podcast. So here you are developing a podcast. To be a part of it. Every day, people are wearing their headphones and listening to their own narrative, their own personal podcast, 24/7. Yes. Mine was going strong at 2:30 this morning. Not helpful. And so having more control, having the confidence to have more control over that narrative and choose words that serve you well, as opposed to those that really have no value or diminish you or limit you in some way.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. It's Audley Stevenson back for another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to follow us on our social media channels. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the handle The Audacious Pod. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, then you know all you got to do is tap that bell down below. Ding, ding, ding. And that way you're connected to all great things audacious related. Now, on this episode of the podcast, we're going to spend some time discussing the awesome power our words can have on others, provided, of course, that they're used correctly. Now, I'm certain we all can remember or reflect on a time when someone instilled some form of confidence in us simply by the words that they used. You know, they made us believe that we could achieve anything we set our minds to. You know, as I stand outside Pauline Public School, where I attended as an elementary school child, I reflected on my time and my grade 5 teacher, specifically Ms. Watson, who gave me the confidence to believe I could do whatever I put my mind to, and simply by saying, "You can do it." We'll expand further on the topic of our power of our words in a conversation with Terre Short. Terre is a human potential developer and has been a coach in some capacity throughout her entire career. She has 30 years of leadership experience and is also the author of the book, The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How and Why Words Matter. It really is a great chat that I'm sure you'll all enjoy. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Terre Short. Enjoy. Hey, Terre, thank you for being here and joining me on the Audacious Living Podcast. Appreciate you taking the time like this. Thank you.
I'm excited to be here. I like I said in the pre-record, I feel like I should interview you.
I'm always open to dialogue, regardless which end of the microphone I sit at. I'm good with it, so no problem. It's a pleasure, again, like I said, pleasure to have you here to talk about, I think, something that is a key driver to success for a lot of people, and it's their potential and being able to tap into their individual potential. We all have it, right? It exists within all of us, but sometimes how we get to it isn't necessarily the same. And I'll use the word journey because for some it's a bit of a journey and to get to where they got to get to. And so maybe kind of as a starting point, Terre, we'll get you sort of talk about maybe what got you to where you are and maybe it's the significance of this thing we call human potential.
Yes, absolutely. Well, people ask me that all the time. How'd you get to where you are? And I credit my father quite a bit because when my youngest memories, I recall him telling me I could do anything. He very, very supportive. And so I started saying when somebody would question, well, you don't know anything about that, or, you can't do that. I'd say, of course I can, because that was his voice behind me, right? Saying that. And so I developed what some people would say probably an inordinate amount of confidence.
I love it.
Good. It served me well. And I started to pay attention to how others didn't have it. And so I boil that down to a sense of self, and I use the acronym SOS.
Okay.
And I believe some people need help, SOS, developing their sense of self. And that's what's led me to where I am today. And I'm all in it to help others develop their sense of self.
I still love the idea of confidence, because I think when you talk about a sense of self, it's got to start with the confidence and who, what we have inside of us, or how powerful, how unstoppable we think we are. If that's not there, you're gonna have a hard time getting to understand your sense of self, isn't it?
Well, at that end, we spend on a ridiculous amount of time unraveling our sense of self. And so I call that Audley, I call that your personal podcast. So
Okay.
here you are developing a podcast. I'm
Yep.
to be a part of it. Every day, people are wearing their headphones and listening to their own narrative, their own personal podcast, 24/7.
Yes.
Mine was going strong at 2:30 this morning. Hello, not helpful. And so having more control, having the confidence to have more control over that narrative and choose words that serve you well, as opposed to those that really have no value or diminish you or limit you in some way.
There's so much to be said about that positive self-talk and what we think of ourselves, and how we view ourselves, because that sort of sets the table, so to speak, in terms of what happens next. If you're beating yourself up or thinking you're not worthy or you don't deserve it or whatever, that's gonna be a tough road.
That's right. And sometimes we allow others to tell us that.
Oh,
And we've all heard about the story of the kid who was told they'll never be a writer, or they'll never be a basketball player, or they're too short, or they're too this, or they're too that, and then they go on to excel. But somebody put those words in their head, and they had to spend some amount of time unraveling that and removing those words and replacing. The key is, it's not just enough to say, I'm no longer going to believe that. You need to replace it with what you will believe. That's where the human potential comes in, is that taking hold of that potential, and even just a tiny bit, because as you take that tiny bit, the rest unravels beautifully.
The unraveling process is key here, Terry. Clearly, what I'm hearing from you, and being able to, because it helps with understanding and awareness, and that serves as a starting point for what you do next. What kind of does that look like? So we talk about unraveling process. What does that look like?
Well, I am a coach, so I would be remiss if I didn't say getting a good coach.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
No different than in basketball, right?
Yeah.
And your career, that people don't get to excel unless they have some guidance, and they have somebody who believes in their potential, right? And then they set about having a discipline around the coaching. And the thing about coaching to me is that's why I say I'm a human potential developer. I don't coach people because I have the answers. I coach people because they have the answers. And so getting in a conversation and asking probing questions, and I always think about it as peeling back the layers. Here I am, like doing this, and we're on a podcast, but
I get it.
Y'all
I can see it, so that's what matters.
There you go. But the peeling back the layers by asking the probing questions is what gets to the heart of the individual, and that's key. And so then that helps them start to build up their sense of self and realize that, like we said, it's like sometimes it's a seed of potential that opens door after door after door. Or back to the sporting analogy, one thing clicks and you're in the zone and you have that feeling one time, then you know how to get there.
Right. What I love about that process is clearly the answer was always inside of us. It's not removed. It's not like you have to go to a library to get that book, to get that answer that you needed for yourself. It's part of you. And it's just a matter of mining it out.
Okay, so true. However, that can be really, really difficult. So seriously, how many people do you know that have some sort of mindfulness or meditation practice? You may be in sports, it's a growing thing now, right? But getting to the place where this is a part of my eventual goal is to live in a world where well-being is normalized. And part of that is that leaders, everybody is very passionate about self-care. And that starts with these mindfulness moments, right? A brilliant woman named Amishi Jha wrote a book called Peak Mind.
Okay.
And she actually proved, study after study after study for decades, that the sweet spot is 12 minutes a day. 12 minutes a day of mindfulness practice. And she used military, first responders, people that were in really critical, fast decision-making processes. And their ability to do that went up exponentially when they had a 12-minute mindfulness practice. Yeah.
So what does that practice look like? And for those who have no idea, they'll go, what's mindfulness? Like, I mean, it's a word that we hear, but what does that look like?
Yeah, excellent question. So personally, I meditate. So when I say mindfulness, I can sit by the river and watch the river flow and only concentrate on that and, clear my mind and have this, whatever, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 12 minutes to honor Dr. Jha. Or I personally meditate every morning. So to me, maybe it's a character flaw, but I need the guidance, or I want the guidance. I put on my earbuds and I want the guidance that I want to be offered something to contemplate for the day. And then there's a quiet time, sometimes music, sometimes not, there's an app for that.
Yes, there is.
Right. So I put on my app and I listen, and there's something offered different every day. And so I spend my 12 minutes, and sometimes that's more or less, having a thought for the day, a guidance, and then having the quiet time. So today's, for example, I've already done it. Yep. And today's was about centering your heart. And so it was a breathing exercise, simple as that. It was a breathing exercise that invited me to imagine the breath going to my heart center. And in doing that, like as the person was guiding me through and then they stopped talking, then I was having that mindfulness moment. And when the personal narrative, when other things like, oh, I've got to do that, or I'll be talking to Audley in an hour, or whatever was coming in, then I would just take another breath and let that pass so that I could be present.
Right. And that the being present is oftentimes the biggest challenge for people. Either you're, those that are consumed with what's happened in the past or what's about to happen, as opposed to in the moment we are right now. So Terry, you and I are here right now and nothing else matters. We're staying present. And that's what we need to work to be like all the time. That's
right. Okay. I'm sorry. Back to the sports, because you're the sports guy.
Yes.
Okay. So it's been proven that the spectacular players, LeBron James, make those many shots, right? It's been proven that those individuals are in the moment.
Yes.
Like that, they're not letting anything else, like previous doubt or some miss or anything. They excel because of their ability to drop into the moment.
Yeah. So if you make 20 shots and you've missed them all, it's believing. So it's staying in the moment, but also believing the next shot will go in.
That's right. And maybe so taking it further, when you're doing your mindfulness, you are imagining that. So a part of mindfulness can be visualization.
Yes.
So, in some of the meditation that I do, sometimes it's a visualization, like they're literally guiding me through visualizing something that I desire or what have you. And then here's the deal. Then you dream about it. Then it all starts to be a part of your subconscious. Here's the crazy statistic. I'm actually currently obsessed with neuroscience.
Okay.
And it's a crazy statistic. First, when I heard this, that that we can take in 40 bits of information in a second. So right now, while you're sitting in your office and I'm in mine, I originally thought 40 in a second, that seems like a lot, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, that's feels overwhelming to me. Ends up your subconscious, when you're sleeping, 20 million bits a second.
Wow.
Right? So when somebody says you should sleep on that, they're right. Right?
Good luck.
Right. So you're imagining the thing that you want to do well. Maybe it's the 3-pointer, and you're setting the intention to do it well and visualizing it. And then your subconscious takes over from there. You got to love it.
That's it. I mean, it just shows you the level of activity that goes on in our heads and our minds. And so when we talk about staying present, it's real, like you need to. because it's easy for us to get distracted and distrayed.
That's right. That's
Man.
right.
So a part of, I guess, mindfulness, and we know we talked about self-talk earlier, but the things that we say, or the words that we choose, or how we talk to ourselves, this is also important too, isn't it not, Terry?
It is. That's why I wrote a book about it. Yeah, it is. So I wrote The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How My Words Matter, for that reason. And the book starts with the internal narrative. And I say, I don't know, probably way too many times in the book, is that voice of the choice. So the one that's playing over in your head, it's a choice. And so choosing words that replace the ones that are minimizing and limiting you. And then I go on to talk about words we choose with loved ones, because sometimes they're triggers. Sometimes we've established these patterns with loved ones that are hard to shake, right? So there's that. And then words and in the world at large, so words that represent racism, ageism, sexism, gender identity, just there's something to know, right? And then words at work. And I wrap it all up with words that you use sort of for the greater good and in the universe, perhaps praying, whatever works for you, in how you're setting intentions, right? And so all of that to say that we limit ourselves with words. And I have a short list if you want to go through a couple.
Sure.
So I'll start with super easy. If. A lot of times we talk about, if we do this, if we get together next week, and that's a little limiting. Why don't we say when we get together next week?
Yes.
Right. Yes. And so why choose if when you can be more certain, right? Yep. So easy one, can't. Audley, for as long as you believe that you can't do something, like make the 3-pointer, you're right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
right.
We just cut that apostrophe T off of there and start speaking in terms of what you can do.
Yes. Focus on the positive.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a pretty common one, but you'll hear, so whether you're the speaker, sometimes I hear people say, they're given a presentation and they say to the people around the board table, well, I'm going to show you the benefits of this project we've been working on, but we'll also have to, don't do that.
Right.
You've just diminished what you're there to talk
discounted. About. Yeah, you just discounted it. Like, so it's almost like, why am I going to listen if you already told me, but it's not going to work.
Exactly. So and is the replacement word. So maybe there is something, and we're going to need additional resources, and something that, but it doesn't need to be a but, it can be and something.
Yes.
And then the other time that really pops in is when I'm going to go with allegedly listening to someone. And so we're leaning in and we're listening. You tell me this, that, and the other thing. And I say, oh, but la-di-da-di-da. I have diminished everything you just said.
That's right. That's right. As opposed to acknowledging, I understand that, or I heard you, or something that shows that you're present.
That's right. And a really good, I just recently learned this phrase, it comes out of positive intelligence.
Okay.
And there's a website and a book about that. But anyway, there's an app for that too.
I love it.
Yeah. And so along the lines of positive intelligence, the idea is that even if you just express something and I adamantly disagree with what you said, first of all, in the book where they talk about how at least 10% of what you said has value, whether I believe it or not. There's 10% has value, right? Yep. And so to train oneself to say, and this is the part I just learned, what I like about what you just said is this. So I tease out something, I really want to say to you, but, right? And I train myself, what I like about what you said is X, and I tease out that nugget. And then I extend it by saying, and that's the point at which I share my point of view, right?
So the part about I love it, and thank you, that's a good little exercise we went through, the replacement piece, because what the replacement means is that it's not like, well, I just won't say that. It's because by not saying that, you're not keeping the conversation going, and there's value in having that conversation. So you maintain that conversation by replacing as opposed to eliminating, and you're essentially turning a negative into a positive.
That's exactly right. There is no eliminating, because we operate, again, neuroscientially, we're science-ish, we operate from a triggering standpoint. So the idea is to replace the trigger So one of your triggers might be every time you disagree, you say, but
Right.
replace that trigger with the end trigger, right? And some people say, oh, okay, right. I'm never going to say, but I'll say, however, and
Yes.
however is but in a tuxedo,
Mm.
right? It's the
Yes.
same.
Yes.
Yeah, you're still pushing back. You're still severing the thought that came before what you were talking about.
The other thing about that is those replacement words. Now we're giving ourselves the opportunity not only just to keep the conversation going, like I mentioned, but to even kind of inspire ourselves and get us to that point where, hey, I believe I can do this, or even, I guess even from an influential standpoint, they can be helpful.
Oh, absolutely. So I mean, but it starts internally. So again, we started the conversation today talking about sense of self. So I want to change up those words for myself first. So if I have any buts lingering in there, I would do that but, or I can't, I'm going to change that up for myself first, so that then I'm showing up differently in how I present to the world, to the others I speak to. Right. There are three others that I'm particularly sensitive to when I hear leaders say them, because I believe two of them make you sound uncertain and lack of confidence, and that's might or probably. When people say, oh, we might meet our goals, or we're probably going to do this, I think.
Right. It's
and you're not
like popping the balloon there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're not instilling confidence by saying that.
Yeah. And then the other one, everybody thinks about this one, I hope, periodically, is should. When somebody's saying should, what goes through my mind is, why are they choosing should? Because should feels to me that somebody else or society or something is dictating that action, instead of I'm choosing it myself. When I say should, doesn't it feel like it's a exterior?
Right. As opposed to the intrinsic, I want to do, I want to do this. I'm driven to do this. I need to do this. Should just sort of makes it feel obligatory in a sense, right?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And I don't know, maybe that was like the rebel in me when I was younger. I grew up in Maryland and there were a lot of shoulds. Should dictated everything. I tease that's why I eventually moved to California, because there weren't so many there. There still aren't. I'm still here.
That's funny.
But you just led us nicely to one of mine that it actually boils into more of a pet peeve for me, I guess.
Okay.
And that's that you want to, or that you need to. And so often we say we have to.
Right.
I have to do this, or I have to do that. And one of my favorites is in a bad way, I have to pick the kids up from school today. Doesn't that sound like a burden?
Yes.
Yeah. And for somebody whose kids are, in their early 20s, like that goes by in a blink of an eye. You get to do that. And it's a fabulous time to be sequestered in the car and ask some really good questions.
Yes. Yeah. No, I get that. So it's almost like it treats like it's a privilege. I get to do this, right? And that just what that actually does, Terry, it almost reframes the entire experience and allows for a bit more appreciation or gratitude for the moments.
Absolutely. All right, Audley, you took me to it. One of my other favorite things to talk about is reframing. So that's the whole sense of self. It's all about reframing. It's all about, and back to the positive intelligence, that program talks about how absolutely every challenge is a gift. Now, some of them are harder to realize what that gift is than others, but in the end, leaning into so my reframing is always, what are the positives? As negative as this seems right now, what are the positives? What am I learning? What do I stand to learn? What might the others learn when we do this thing? And then how do the positives and the learning inform how I will respond, not react? Because before we do that reframing, we're all about reacting. And so I'm not reaching my true potential if I'm reacting. When I practice the pause, now I'm going to slow down and I reframe in that manner, positives, learning, and then how will I respond based on that reframing. So to me, that's one of the main ways to elevate one's sense of self and start uncover your untapped potential.
Well, it just seems to me that, so we talk about unraveling at the very beginning, right? So it seems to me that once you've unraveled, the reframing is a natural part of that process, if you will, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's right. So that's, again, back to, you don't eliminate anything, you replace it. So you're replacing it with the reframing. And reframing happens better when you're in a quiet, peaceful mind state. So I would say you have your mindfulness moment first, some deep breathing, what have you, if you have time to do a meditation series, what have you, and then you do the reframing. Here's a good visual for that. If you're at the ocean and the water's all churning up and such, and you throw a rock and you don't see the rock, right? I think when you're at the pond or the lake that's perfectly placid and calm, like the place I get to when I do some mindfulness practices, then I throw in this reframing, this intention, this thing that's important to me, this 3-pointer that I'm going to focus on. Then I put it in there, and there's a ripple effect, and it's all good.
And it's a beautiful analogy. So I've got the image in my mind. It's a great analogy. I think, and what it really happens is when we talk about clarity, that's kind of where the clarity comes from, all that, right?
Yeah.
It's just right there. And so that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. And we can take it a step further and say, if I'm standing on the edge of this very quiet, peaceful place, I can see my reflection. I am reflecting, right? So just to take it one step further and think about, that's the whole point. I should be reflecting upon the positives, the learning, and now how I'm going to respond. And I'm able to do that when there's a reflective surface that's born out of me having that mindfulness moment.
And why I love this conversation, Terry, because it very much fits in with what we're talking about here on the podcast. We spend so much time encouraging individuals to be their bold, audacious selves, and by doing so, you can have such tremendous impact in the world. And through all that we've talked about, it gives us that clarity to be very, very clear on who we are and what we need to do for ourselves, and that's where we can have that impact. And so I think it's such a really nice fit. But I do like the way we're literally breaking it down to the simple, like a simple first step that's really small, minute, but they're impactful.
Very impactful, like the ripples, right?
Yes,
like
yes.
Yeah, your outlast
Adversity, yes.
Adversity, yeah, I wasn't sure if outlast was the right word. That's the reframing. How do you outlast adversity? By reframing, by accepting the gift that is the adversity. And so again, it's about replacing it. You can't just accept it and feel the negativity. You replace it with what you learn and what the positives are and such. So good. I love your framework.
Thank you for the bold framework plug. While we're at it, B is better than yesterday. O is outlast adversity. L, live your truth. And then D is disrupt the norms. And I think all of those things fit into how we can position ourselves to be that more audacious individual. And so, the outlasting the adversity is a big one, because it literally is accepting that, yes, this is happening to me in this moment. It might be sucky, it might be crappy, maybe I don't feel good about it, whatever, but that it doesn't have to be this. And I know that if I can get to the other side, that's where all the greatness lies. And that's really the framework behind that.
Yes. I'm going to have one correction though, if I may. When you get to the other side.
Yes. No. Thank you. No. When we get to the other side, I'll make it to the other side. No. Right. Please, thank you for that correction, because you're absolutely correct. If we are approaching it as it's something that is going to happen, our intentions are that this is going to see its way through, we have to start speaking that. And I think that's what goes to the power of words. And maybe, and I want to sort of touch on that specifically, and the powers of words that we put out into the universe and what we say.
Yeah. So first of all, I say yours is the voice of humankind. Okay. That's pretty powerful. So think about the weight of that, right?
Yes.
In the book, I quote a gentleman named Tom Kenyon, and he says, we're creating the world by how we speak to each other.
Yes.
So you're right. The power of the words that we put out in the universe is so understated or underestimated, right? It goes back to that, the impact of the kid being told, you'll never do this, you'll never do that, right?
Yes.
And so when we're think about that, think about the power of the words you have today, just today, the people that you interact with. And when you choose words that are uplifting and inspiring, as opposed to minimizing and limiting, and you offer those words to everybody that you speak to today, right? You can do this. When we meet next week, I believe in your ability, or, what have you, or even simply reinforcing something that you see. I so appreciate the confidence that you showed when you did X, so those are the right words to be putting in the universe, the positive forward potential building words, right?
I love it. And really what that does, it sort of sets the stage of what's to come. And, I really believe that, the words that you put out, they do truly matter. And if you're putting out negativity, that's what you're going to see. And so that's such I don't think that point, and I don't know if people really fully respect or even understand how powerful our words are. But they truly, truly are.
I absolutely agree. I think it's a underestimated quality that we have, that we possess. So here's the thing. I'm not going to be able to help you with your potential unless I understand my potential. Right. And the link between them are the words.
That's right.
It's the word choices.
That's right.
And I'm going to uplift your potential when I choose my words well.
I know we talked earlier about my role with NBL Canada is the commissioner. And I remember, I started as a volunteer within the organization and just worked hard and did stuff, not really knowing where the end goal was, just knowing I believed in what the work of the organization was. And I remember being at an event, a public event with a friend of mine, who since he's passed away several years ago. But in that moment, I remember him saying to me, I remember he said specifically, "I can see you running this organization one day." And in that time, I was like, so I'm using negative. What are you talking about? I don't see that. And he's like, no, I can see it. Well, 5 years later, that's exactly what happened. And I remember sort of reflecting, and you think back and reflect, you put the pieces together. And I remember saying, wow, Rick was absolutely right. I didn't see this, and Rick saw it, and Rick told me I was going to do this, and this is what I'm doing. And I started to feel a little bit of sadness. I'm going, wow, Rick's not here to see this moment, right? Mm-hmm. But then I corrected myself. Rick already saw the moment. That's why he was able to tell it to me, right? Right. And so again, the words that we use matter, and they'll always come back. People will always remember those words and how and the impact they had on them, because there's feelings attached to that. And so as we talk, that's the story that comes to mind.
It gives me chills. So here's the deal. Rick was visualizing it for you, right? You're at that time, for whatever reason, you didn't have the ability, and he was helping you visualize it. He was planting that seed. So he visualized it, and he was planting the seed for however long it took. I think you said 5 years. Right? That's not in the scheme of things. That's not a long time. He was planting the seed for you to then visualize it.
That's right. That's right. And so And so when we can do that for people, right? And when we can, so when I can say, hey, I see the greatness in you, you are going to do outstanding things. You've given me almost given me a license to dream a little bit, and I help. Okay, I can. So-and-so sees it. And this is what I can do. And so it's again, we go back to the power of our words is impactful, really.
Yeah. And so that's building your sense of self. So that's why I like SOS, because we need help. So Rick helped you with your sense of self, and he built it up, and now you carry that with you, and you're sharing that with others. I mean, think about the ripple effect of the sentence that Rick shared with you.
And that to me is always the piece I love most about it, is what happens afterwards and how it can ripple and go beyond. It's fine. I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, it really was impactful. And I know in myself, there's many instances with individuals who I've been able to encourage this exact same way that I was encouraged. And so if we can all do that, just imagine how awesome and audacious this place would be, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh man, Terry, I so appreciate you being here and sharing this fashion. Such a wonderful dialogue, such a wonderful chat. For our listeners who want to learn about you, or specifically to snag a copy of your book, where can we send them?
Yes, thank you. Well, I feel like we could go on and on and on. So I love chatting with you.
Thank you.
So our website is www.thrivingleadercollaborative.com. So there's no S in leader.
Yes.
And you could email me at Terre, spelled Audley, Terre, at thrivinglc.com. I love to hear from people. And the book's on the website, the book's online on all the ways that you can buy a book. So yeah,
that's amazing. That's amazing. And I do want to go back, because you specifically work with leaders. And I think that's important to know. But at the same time, what we're talking about also, it's universally applicable and it can apply to everyone. So it's not geared just for leaders. It can apply to everyone, our personal lives, wherever. It doesn't matter, because it's the same strategy and tactics, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I just happen to coach leaders. I do one-on-one coaching, but I hold workshops and retreats actually for anyone. So, even people who are aspiring to be a leader. And so here's why. I contend that it starts with leading yourself. It's no different than the personal podcast, right? It's how you show up to work, whether or not you ever want to be a leader. It begins with you leading yourself, leading your life well, and all of that is manifests itself in more joy. So I'm on a mission for people to find more joy in their lives and therefore be thriving.
Amazing. Terre, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Great chatting with you. Thank you for the insights, and keep up the fantastic work.
Yes, thank you. You too. I will if you will.
That's a promise. All right, take care.
Thanks.
Back we are on the podcast. I have to send out my thanks and appreciation to Terre for being here. Thank you so much. I appreciate your insights and the lessons on the power of our words. I truly love spending time with you. So again, thanks for being here. When I think back to my conversation with Terre, I really appreciated so much of what she had to say. But if there's just one thing that I would take from our chat, it would have to be this. It was Mother Teresa who once said, "Kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless." What we say to others and how we say it is one of the most powerful tools in building human potential. Our language and the words we use can lift others to reach their highest peak or tear them down. It can help build positive relationships or encourage discord and distrust. It can help shape how others think about themselves, the action steps they choose to take, and ultimately where they end up in life. Think back to your childhood and recall the voices of your teachers. What kinds of words did they use? What was the tone of voice? Recall how you felt being around them. Was it safe and motivated to learn, or self-doubting, insecure, or maybe even angry? It's important to understand that the words we use should be kind, straightforward, and direct because of their audacious power they possess. But also keep in mind the words we use and how we think in our own head. They're important too. Think about those words again, and or the next time you're talking or describing someone, ask yourself, am I tearing someone down or helping them reach their audacious potential? We've come to the end of another episode of the Audacious Living Podcast, and as always, I send my thanks and appreciation to our outstanding listeners and all those lovers of audaciousness. Thank you for your ongoing and tremendous support. It is so much appreciated. And until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.